Aquinas and DNA. How can they go together? An old philosophy and a very recent scientific discovery. If you want to know more about Aquinas and modern science, I would recommend this book. It deals with all kinds of sciences. It explains Aquinas very well. And if you want to know more about DNA, I would recommend this book. That gives you many more details than we can do in this video. So what does Aquinas say about something like science? He uses old examples, of course, but they are still very much common sense and important, I think, for science. Say we use the example of building a house. Aquinas would say there are 5 explanations for it. First of all, what is it? A house, of course. What is it made of? Building material, of course. What is it for? To live in. Who made it? Of course, builders. And what is it like? It's probably built according to a blueprint. This sounds very commonsensical, trivial maybe, but it's important to understand those 5 different explanations, for they have very different answers. Each course provides a different explanation, a different kind of answer to the question why. And scientists sometimes limit themselves to only one of them. So that's where Aquinas can help us. 5 different explanations. He calls what is it? The causa formalis. What is it made of? The causa materialis. What is it for? The causa finalis. What made it? The causa efficiens. And what is it like? The causa exemplaris. Sorry for the terminology, but it might help us later on. Aquinas' point is that all 5 causes are necessary in order to capture the complexity of causal relationship as they exist in the actual world. So we can also apply this to DNA. DNA is mostly located in the nucleus, but also in mitochondria. What is DNA? What is DNA made of? What is DNA for? What made DNA? What is DNA like? In other words, Aquinas tells us the material cause explains what something is made of, the efficient cause explains where something came from, who or what produced or moved it, the formal cause explains what makes something the way it is, the final cause explains the ultimate purpose to which something tends, and the exemplary cause explains what something is modeled after. So the causa materialis of a house is the building material. It's made of building material. It explains what something is made of. A thing's material cause is the material of which it consists. A table is made of wood, a statue of marble, a house of bricks and wood. We can apply that also to DNA. What is it made of? There are 4 kinds of nucleotides in DNA. You don't care about the details probably, otherwise go to my book. It's all in the genes. A, G, C and T. Then they exist as a double chain structure, like a zipper. They are held together with CG bonds and TA bonds. Finally, the ladder-like double chain molecule is coiled into a double helix. Then the causa efficiens of a house. What made this house? A builder made the house. The efficient cause explains where something came from, who or what produced or moved it. It's the cause that brings something about. Carpenters make tables, sculptors make statues, builders make houses, parents make children. For DNA, a similar story. What is the causa efficiens? Most people think that it builds itself. What is the causa efficiens that makes DNA? First of all, DNA can never make itself. It's not even capable, as many still believe, of self-replication, making copies of itself on its own. It looks like it does, but that's a little deceiving. The idea that DNA replicates itself by using the code provided by the DNA leads to a terribly circular problem. To put this in Aquinas terminology, a causa materialis can never be its own causa efficiens. It's actually the surrounding cellular machinery that makes sure that all DNA strands are replicated into new strands. So the causa efficiens is a little more complicated than it looks. Proteins are being built with transfer RNA, and messenger RNA is a copy of the DNA of one side of the string. So it seems to make proteins, but somehow the DNA does not even know how to fold the protein so as to make it work. The famous case of insulin, when it was made in the lab, it had the perfect DNA or messenger RNA code, but it did not fold properly, and so it didn't work. Many proteins, especially those with enzymatic activity, need helper molecules. For instance, hemoglobin needs a heme group with iron in it, which is not a protein part. So there is much more to it than just DNA. DNA is not the secret of life, as so many seem to think, but it's rather the other way around. Life is the secret of DNA. Let's go to the causa formalis. If we use the house as an example again, it has the shape or form of a house. That's the causa formalis. It explains what something actually is. It explains why the material constituents are arranged in the way they are. It explains how the building material has the shape or form of a house. Something similar holds for DNA. The genetic code in DNA is translated into messenger RNA, and then with the help of transfer RNA, the amino acids are put together into a protein, but there is more to it, as we saw. So, DNA is not simply a chemical molecule, but a biological structure that carries a code. Code language is very different from chemical language. DNA is material, but its code is immaterial. If the sequence of DNA were fully predetermined by chemical bonds, DNA would not be able to store or convey any information at all. For instance, these 6 nucleotides can do different things. They can insert the amino acids valine and serine. It can regulate the expression of neighboring genes. It can act as a blank separating 2 DNA sequences. So what determines what? We go to the causa finalis of a house. The explanation is it's meant to be lived in. The final cause explains the ultimate purpose toward which something tends. It is what a thing is for. A knife is for cutting, a pump is for pumping, a house is for living. It reflects the generally accepted idea in science that like causes have like effects. The causa finalis is the effect of the causa efficient. So in DNA, the answer is to form and regulate a human being, for instance, or any other being. The codons that we have shown here, they are all for the same amino acid, alanine. DNA has various functions. Some DNA is for making proteins, some DNA is for control of other DNA, and some DNA is called silent. Whether it has no code function, that is very dubious, but let's not go into that discussion. So DNA sections are not just beads on a string. They have a very complicated structure. They may have different purposes, but they still work together in unison. So we finally end up with the causa exemplaris of a house. The builder must already have in mind the house he or she wants to create. As Aquinas says, before something begins to be in reality, it is already in the mind of the agent. This blueprint in the mind of the builder is an example of an exemplary course, a form or idea in the imitation of which something comes to be, says Aquinas. All creatures are ideas in the mind of God, otherwise they could not even exist. Nothing can pop itself in or out of existence, as they say. Nothing comes from nothing. So what is behind it? Why is there something rather than nothing? Only God can explain that. So the causa exemplaris of DNA has something to do with God. That's why Francis Collins, the leader of the Human Genome Project in the past, speaks about the DNA code as the language of God. DNA is just a secondary cause that finds its causa exemplaris in God, who is the primary cause of everything in this universe. Without the primary cause, there would not be any secondary causes, let alone human beings. When we speak of randomness in science, and sometimes they say DNA is a random product, we are talking in statistical terms in the sense of how things in this universe are related to each other. But when we speak of providence in religion, God's providence, we are talking about how things in this universe are related to God, not to each other, as Stephen Barr explains. So you want to know more about all of this? The book Aquinas and Modern Science, or It's All in the Genes. This is what is in the book It's All in the Genes. You can find it at genesispc.com/books, or Aquinas and Modern Science with a foreword by Father Joseph Koteski of Fordham University, and it speaks about this, especially today, Aquinas and genetics. Again, you can find it at genesispc.com/books.